especially people who are learning English, I'm sure you've been advised to read. So I'm sure you're actually reading something right now. It could be any book, right? Well, even those who are native English speakers read because it's one of their hobbies or their interests. So when you read a book and you have to talk about the book that you've read, what do you say? Do you say it was good, it was bad, it was rubbish, or do you just say it was so-so? Well, there are many other phrases you can actually use when you are talking about a book that you have just read. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about how you can use phrases in relation to the books that you are reading or that you have just read. Okay, let's look at a few of them and try to apply it whenever we are talking. The first one says, I couldn't put it down. Now, the act of putting something down refers to taking it out of your hands and placing it away from you. But if I say that I could not take it away from my hand and put it away from me, I am actually saying that the book was very interesting. So, there are certain books which are thrillers or books relating to suspense. In these books, you kind of don't know what's going to happen until the very end, right? So you are obviously very curious. You want to know what's going to happen, right? So in order to do that, you've got to keep on reading. And in order to keep on reading, you can't take the book away from you. So in other words, you found the book very interesting. It has captivated you. So therefore, you can't put it down. So if you are reading a book like that, which is a really good thriller or a suspense, you will say, I couldn't put it down. It was so amazing. It was so interesting. Okay? And the next expression you are going to use when talking about a book is, I can't wait until the next book comes out. Now, this is a sentence that you are going to use when you've finished reading a book, okay? You finished reading it, okay? So you've finished reading it. You're done with it. But we all know that, nowadays authors, they kind of add new books to their list. So they have a series of books which are part of the same story, but there is a sequel, right? So you have one story, and then you have the second and the third and the fourth. Books like Game of Thrones or the Chronicles of Narnia, you don't just have one book, right? So when you have finished reading a book and you've really loved it, okay, now you actually trust the author. So this expression shows that you trust the author to write the following book, okay, in the same series of books, because you know that just because you finished reading one book which was very interesting, the remainder of the books in that series are going to be as good. That's when you will say, I can't wait until the next book comes out, because you've loved the one book and you are sure that the other books are going to be as good as the first one, okay? And the next expression is, I highly recommend it. Now, whether we go to a movie or a restaurant, okay, or whether we just go, and book a flight, if we love a certain product or services, what do? It's very normal for all of us to spread the good word, right? So we spread good word about the book. So every friend you meet, any family member who reads, you are sure to tell that person that, look, I've just read this book which was really interesting and I highly recommend that you read it. So what are you doing? You are spreading good word about a book that you know is absolutely amazing, and you feel that anybody else out there who reads it is going to love it as much as you do. Okay? And the next expression is, it was a real page turner. Okay, when you have a book, you turn pages, right? So any book that is a real page turner, again, is very interesting. Okay, now you could use this in place of this. Okay, so both these phrases really have the same meaning. Okay, but there are different ways of using it when talking about a book. And because even this book is supposed to be very interesting, and because it's a page turner, we could again talk about books which involve, crime fiction, or again suspense, or maybe thrillers, or maybe horror. So things that are really captivating, that kind of really keep you engaged. That's when you will say that it was a real page turner, because you couldn't put the book down. You probably spend the entire night reading it. So that's when you say it's a real page turner. Okay, and moving on to the next expression, we've got a phrase which says, it spoke volumes to me. Now, certain books may not be fictional books. Certain books may be self-help books, for example. So books relating to maybe meditation, or, basically just introspection on life, what life is all about. So it gives you, ways to live life. So these kind of books which tell you about how to live life in a proper way to make you successful, or to live life, in peace, or to just, it just kind of makes you feel like you have to be a good person, right? So certain books speak volumes to you. So they give you information that you've not really had before, and it kind of opens your eyes to a different perspective of looking at life. So when you read books like that, especially self-help books, that's when you will say, it spoke volumes to me. Of course, you can also use these phrases if you feel peaceful, or if you kind of get a different perspective even after reading fictional books. Okay, so that's when you say, it spoke volumes to me. Or you could also say that it was very soul-searching. You could use words like it was soul-searching. Or you could say it was very uplifting. If it made you feel very good on the inside, you could say it was very uplifting, which also means encouraging. Okay? And the next expression is, I think it was okay. Okay, now some books are not very good, but then they're not very bad either, right? So I think it's fair to say that the book was okay. Okay, which means that the book was average and easily forgettable. You probably in a week or in a month's time wouldn't even remember what you read, or you wouldn't even remember the story. So they are average, or what I call as forgettable books. Easily forgettable books. That's when you will say, I think it was okay. It wasn't that great. It was okay. All right then. Then we've got an expression that says, I couldn't really get into it. What are you trying to get into? Well, when you're reading, you are getting into the story, right? So when you say that I really couldn't get into it, it basically means that the story was not so engaging. The story was not so interesting for you to actually keep reading the book. Okay, you probably did not even understand it. Some people don't understand certain books. Or some people don't understand the storyline, the plot, around which the story revolves. That's when you will say, I couldn't really get into it. Okay, you didn't find it interesting. You probably didn't understand certain parts of the story. You didn't kind of understand what the story was all about, really. Okay, and then we have another expression that says, the author did nothing for the story. Now, obviously the story is written by the author. So if the story did not turn out to be that good, you're going to blame the poor author, right? So when you say the author did nothing for the story, you're basically saying that the story did not have a good plot, or maybe the main character or the characters were not believable. So, I'm a reader, I'm a frequent reader, so I come across a lot of books wherein the author has done nothing for the story. So, the plot is kind of weak, there is no strong base to the storyline, and sometimes the characters are way too large of a life, they're not believable. So that's when you will say that the author did nothing for the story, okay? You didn't really like it, but that's another way of expressing a book that you've read. And then we've got two more phrases, which says, it made me laugh and cry at the same time. Now, this is a sentence or an expression that you will use when you're talking about books that relate to drama and romance. Of course, for you to use this sentence, you're going to have to like the book a lot. Okay, so when you have a story like, a romantic story, wherein, maybe the lady or the man who is in love dies at the very end, you go through a riot of emotions wherein you're happy, but then you're also very sad because it's romantic, but then there's this tragedy at the end. So that's when you say, it made me laugh and cry at the same time, because we are talking about a story which involves some kind of drama, some really nice mushy romance, and that's how you're going to say it, okay? And our last expression is, you could give it a miss. When would you miss something? When you don't like it, right? If you like something and you miss it, you don't really regret it. So if you didn't like the story, okay, you would give it a miss. But if I'm telling somebody else that you could give it a miss, I'm actually recommending that they do not read it. So sometimes you hate the story so much that you are going to tell everybody out there not to read it. So this expression is basically recommending someone not to read a book. So you could say something like, this book is a waste of time. You could give it a miss. Okay, so you are recommending that the person not read that story. Okay, well, that's it from me on this lesson on talking about books that we read. All right, so I'll be back with some more lessons. Until then, this is me saying, keep reading.